Then I would like to welcome our speakers, Fred Kent and Stefan Bödecker. So Fred is the founder of the placemaking movement itself, co-founder of the Social Life Project and the Placemaking Fund. He was mentored by William Hollywhite and Jane Jacobs. And by the way, he also founded the Earth Day in New York. And I'm delighted to welcome the placemaking legend, Fred. And at the same time, I also want to thank Peter Kroenendahl, who helped in bringing Fred on board with us. Following Fred, we will have Stefan Bödecker as our next speaker, who has been practicing urban design for over 25 years in the Netherlands. And he's the director of BFAS Plus and practices urbanism and placemaking here in the Netherlands. I would again maybe like to request, and Stefan is also the chairman of BNSP, which is the Association of Dutch Urban Planners and Designers. So now for today, we have a short program of about 1.5 hours. Firstly, Fred is going to talk about placemaking and how he thinks cities can open up post-pandemic. And he's going to talk about the transformation of the cities. And following him, Stefan will be talking about what we learned from the last year and give a Dutch placemaking perspective. And he's also going to talk about how we have come 20 years further and how it has also turned some discussions at the table. So Fred, with no further delays, please. I think we can put you on the spotlight. Yeah, you're there, Fred.
Is it sharing?
Yeah, it is, Fred. I can see.
Yep, and now there we are. Right?
Yep.
Is that good?
Yes, Fred. Yes.
Okay. So
I can see your screen.
It's I wish I were there. You are all in one of my favorite places in the world, and I can remember biking around with all of you and trying to follow Peter Groenendahl, who has a way of doing a slalom course around all kinds of people wandering through the middle of Amsterdam. And I sort of followed him, and it actually was like skiing, which I love to do. So we love Amsterdam, and we love that part of Europe. We spent a lot of time there a while back, wandering all over the Netherlands or Holland. And really, it's an amazing country, an amazing part of the world. And we actually learned a lot about many things from your community and your culture, especially about streets and communities and how they can become very healthy places. So a few years ago, we set up, after heading up and leading the Project for Public Spaces, we set up the Placemaking Fund as a small foundation with two programs, Placemaking X, which is a global network led by Ethan Kent and his brother Josh, who literally grew up working with us. So they started, Ethan's 40 something, but he started about 40 years ago when we were walking down a street in the state of Washington, and he told me what I was doing, at about 8 or 9 years old. So ever since then, I've been learning from him and from Josh, who's one of the more organized people around, which is very important for all of us. So anyway, we about 3 years ago, and even before that, really the whole idea of placemaking had become so global, and there's so many really great people out there that we really had to move beyond our organization, Project for Public Spaces, into a more catalytic role through what Ethan set up is called Placemaking X. And then Kathy and I set up the Social Life Project. And then with the Placemaking Fund, we have enough money for those two to operate for a while in a small way, but we expect it to grow very substantially as the network gets more and more active. So one of the really strong agendas that we feel is that placemaking really can have a big impact. It's right now, it's a quiet revolution. People don't realize, how much of an impact the kind of cities we have and how they're set up now that really aren't meant to be functioning in the future. in a continuous projection the way they are, and that we have to rethink them and rethink with placemaking. We have to look at environmental issues and health issues and other issues that all together can make a planet that we want to live on and can live on. And the Placemaking X is a global movement. It's 16 regional centers, but then sub-regions, and thousands of people out there are taking this on as a way of building the communities they want. It's locally led. It is not about a central organization. We are one part of a much larger group, and we couldn't be prouder of the people that we're working with. I mean, it's a real network, a real collaboration. And there are a lot of leaders, a lot of advocates out there, probably many more than that. And one of the key things that just keeps hitting me broadside is this idea that there are more and more, I can't read the whole thing, but I got to go back up to that there are more and more of us thinking of a different vision for the world, one that takes care of our most precious resources, the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the places we share. I mean, that's it. And who's saying that? It's a mayor, and a mayor who really is delivering in a really good way a lot of that. And a lot of us are thinking about how they're doing it and other people are. So the other thing which is just always been true to me, that everyone is a placemaker. We all, grow up building blocks or Legos or whatever it is. I mean, we're thinking about place as children. We're thinking about doll houses. We're thinking about little villages that we can build on a computer. I mean, it's just, we're all doing that. And then we all then are attracted to places where we thrive. And we all know we can help make our communities better. And then finally, we are really nourished by the process of creating wholeness. That's what makes our lives worthwhile and an exciting place to be. So it's placemaking is a dynamic human function, an act of liberation, of staking claim, of beautification, and it's true human empowerment. And it really is community-led improvisation. Now, one of the big things that has always bothered me, and I want you to appreciate my graphics. These are my graphics. But when I started working back in 1975 with Holly White and others, there were an amazing group of people then, but these are the disciplines that we had to deal with. And each of them at that point had become their own audience. They developed their own agendas and they promoted them. I mean, the traffic engineering profession was just moving forward like a bunch of armies into communities everywhere, and government buildings were being built, but were kind of standoff, aloof. Museums were becoming sort of architectural icons. Architecture had been more about object than about people and place, and so on and so forth. So it wasn't very good. But then, since then, the different disciplines have exploded exponentially. There are many more than this. And they're all doing very important work, but unfortunately, mostly within their own field, in their own world, in their own community. And then they're insisting that they have a place at the table for all these, they're very important, every one of them. I mean, they're all, you go and you deal with, they all have very important goals. And even the traffic engineering goals are changing, and it's just everything is in transition right now. And we think that placemaking can probably give a little bit of honesty to each of them. And so I like this quote that someone on our staff earlier did. If architecture is frozen music and urban planning is composition, placemaking is improvisational street performance. So that means architecture is in its own world and planning is over there in its world. And then here we all are, people who live in these communities, trying to do improvisation in those communities, but with an enormous lid on top of us that doesn't allow us to do it because all these other people have running the show, so to speak. But if we to get the future we want, supposing we turn that upside down and you start with placemaking as improvisational activations, then planning can become vision and architecture becomes happy music. So by turning it upside down, we actually get everything lined up in a way where everyone is important, but the focus is really on the place and community and people. So in order to do that, we have to turn everything upside down to get it right side up, to get from inadequate to extraordinary. And that's been our mantra for 30 years. And it used to be kind of a threat, but I think now it's kind of a relief. People really get quite excited about the possibility because they can see where they've gotten. And now after COVID and during COVID, they can see what we're missing. And so the future is actually very good if we allow ourselves to think that way. So there are 11 ways that we've come up with, or probably more or less, but anyway, these are the ones that we are using right now to open our communities and businesses after COVID. And one is connecting socially, reconnecting socially. I mean, this is just basic, and it's probably the most important of all the items because we need to have that social life. And, where did this go there? We need to get back to sharing stories, to having our hair cut on the street, which is what we did during COVID. But then, so there's that. And then the other thing that happened a few months ago, I've always been working with the idea that we needed to make streets as places. But all of a sudden, I had an epiphany, and I said, really, we should start with the sidewalks. That's where it's at. So we did a post called "It's Sidewalks Stupid," because we've all been focusing on the streets, not on the sidewalks, which is where we live, want to live, and can live much better than we are now. And so you get these great sidewalk scenes, and that's where life is. And how do we bring that back, have these discussions and so on, and eat ice cream and have the wonderful social activities that go on when we have good sidewalks. And then the streets into shared spaces. I learned so much from you all in Holland there. But the whole idea is to, not through, and mobility to access to places, walking, biking, transit, cars, in that order. I was on a panel with VW leadership about mobility, but mobility to them is really just about vehicle mobility and not accessibility. And so they were dealing with a half a deck. The other half of the deck is where we all live and what we need and how that interfaces with their term of mobility. That's not happening, and that's a big deal. So how do we transform our streets? This is just an amazing, really beautiful, wonderful way of getting on a former street down to the Seine. How do we make our corners and places of access in the neighborhoods a big shift from what may be outside of those? How do we get those kinds of conversations? And then bringing the inside out is a whole nother thing. I mean, this goes right at the heart of architecture, because rather than build a building with a wall or just a facade for a storefront, we say, wait a minute, let's just bring the inside out and people out and the products out and have a much less rigid connection between the two. And so this is in Gdansk, Poland, and this is a series of decks and basements, and they all just pour out into a street that used to be a very prominent, wealthy merchant street, but is now one of the great streets. And then just, how do we make everything so much more engaging? And these food stores just roll out onto the space, and you literally buy your food outside or inside if you wish. And here on a street where you really have your connections with the pedestrians, and then displays. And then also bringing the inside out of public buildings. Why do we have these buildings with big walls and that just keep us from understanding or knowing? But every public building that I know of could have a big impact just by bringing stuff outside and making it usable. In the Paris City Hall, Hotel de Ville is just always has something going on outside. And then you can even bring things outside further. The one on the right is a whole line of books, stalls and amenities in Moscow, and then the library on the Seine in Paris. So there's all kinds of creative ways of doing that. And then amenities, how do we have seating anywhere and everywhere? Seating is one of the most impactful of all the possibilities that people can have. That the seating this will work in one place, but it won't work somewhere else. This seems to work wherever it is. And the more passion there is, the better. And then, of course, the whole idea of art, amenities, and if you're going to read a book, you might as well be in the same position as someone else. And then the passeggiata, the most wonderful experience people can have. We just happened on a small town in southern Italy, Otranto, and you can see the whole waterfront there. It's there, but it is on a Sunday afternoon at 3:00 we arrived, and you couldn't, I think there were 6,000 people in the population there, and I'll bet 5,999 were out walking on this promenade, eating ice cream, meeting and people, socializing. It was amazing. And how do we get back to that as a key part of our lives? And then just simple hanging out. This is people who are kind of a little quirky and kind of want to show off some of their marvelous ways of thinking and doing. They go to the prominent places and hang out so that they can be seen and be seen. So hanging out is an important part of any community, but are there places to do that? And it's really kind of a shame how little there is, that it's so easy. I love this one on the right, where I don't know how many cups they've been drinking, but there's 5 there. I don't know whether they've been drinking the others or they're on the next group. So you need some kind of a shill to stand around. You just don't put a bench out. You got to do a lot more than that. And then the whole concept of markets as unique destinations. This is so untapped everywhere we've been. There's sometimes organized markets, but what about the unorganized ones that are in a community or a neighborhood? And just the kind of connections that people make, the pleasure they have in being in them. These are where life is at its best. And I love the brush vendor there, just comes around in a cart. And I always buy some when I go there. It's in Freiburg. And then new opportunities for the impacted, for the ability to go out and stroll in your community is just absolutely critical for people of all ages and all capacities. And then places for lovers to be is another key location, a little bit in the shade, a little bit out of the mainstream, but at least where they can see and be seen. And it's just, that's their lives, makes their lives great. And then making it fun. That's just joyous to have those places. Are we doing that? Nowhere near. I mean, it's a fraction of what needs to happen in communities. This is in Times Square, where they were doing yoga, games. They're about ready to play hockey in the summertime with his daughter, and so on, and dancing. Wherever there's dancing, there's a lot more to life than what you just see where people are dancing. And where that can happen is a real indicator of a place that comes together comfortably and easily. And kissing, that's the other thing, is that it's fun our work has taken us around the world, and we always find the best places. And then we also find the best places to kiss. And it's amazing how kissing seems to happen in certain places. We don't quite have the full code for why, but we're getting close, and if there's one couple kissing, there's often another couple not too far away. But then you go somewhere else, even in the same place, and why aren't they there? So this is something we can all discover, and maybe we could have a conference on kissing someday. So Holly White, he says, I end in praise of small spaces. The multiplier effect is tremendous. It's not just the number of people using them or the larger number who enjoy them vicariously or the larger number who feel better about a city center for knowledge of the city. For such places are priceless, whatever the cost, they're built of a set of basics and they are right in front of our noses and all we have to do is look. Kathy and I in the last year during COVID, starting March 14th, when we got back from Brisbane, Australia, we have been going through hundreds of thousands of images and posting posts. We have probably 40 posts now, we call a Social Life Project. And there are so many of these little stories that we've got and that we're putting together. So, any of you should, sign up or just bookmark the Social Life Project in the posts we're doing. And you'll see a lot more. We're about to launch one on small towns and another one on the best waterfront in the world, which I'm not going to tell you because you have to sign up to go get it. So the whole idea is we need to turn everything upside down to get it right side up, to get from inadequate to extraordinary. And we should blast that idea around the world because that's our future. And so the idea of these catalytic campaigns is have a vision, communicate it, search for impediments, organize a strong team, attack complacency, produce short-term wins, take on bigger challenges, and connect change to the future of the communities. So this is a strategy. I think we even have to make that even more part of our work as placemakers. It's not just catalytic campaigns, but it's catalytic activations that have a deep impact on communities. If I were in Amsterdam, one of the biggest ones to have the biggest impact would be Museumplein, which is where we worked. And I'm so mad about Amsterdam because we did a lot of work there and nothing happened except they took out the Amsterdam thing, which I mean, that was better than a lot of the stuff. They should have taken out a few of the museums for all they're doing. And so here we are, Placemaking X, the Social Life Project, and we're having more fun than we've ever had, and we're about to go traveling again. And we hope you all are thinking the same and that we can all meet and kind of have some more fun together.
Yeah, we hope so too, Fred. Maybe if you, now we can see you. That's great.
Hello.
So, yes, thanks, Fred, for such inspirational pictures and the presentation. And actually, we already have one question. So maybe till then, maybe you can answer that about how to bring inside in cold places and how to do it in a sustainable way. And that's a question from Tatiana.
Well, I love the term because when you walk on a street or a sidewalk, it's the ones that are in your face in a nice way. I mean, the great streets, you can't walk fast, no matter how eager you are to get going, you're going to slow down in these places. And, we've talked about the power of 10, but some of these streets, they're the power of 100. And it's that when you go beyond 10, you're into the real high functioning streets. And so if you look at the best waterfronts, they're factors of 100. And so there's so many things to do that you can't even walk 10 feet without something more sort of in your face. And it's those streets that are a whole paradigm shift above the kind of typical streets that many of us are used to. And then all the ones that we can't do anything on are just really terrible. So we really need a new, instead of storefront designers and architects who do the buildings, we need people who can are really stage set designers almost, that can bring the life out, and who really understand the dynamics of selling products that people can be attracted to and slow down and then buy. I mean, and connect with the merchant. The idea of the merchant staying inside the store is not a good idea. Get them out there and knowing the clients, the customers, and so on.
True.
So it's like taking the whole wall down of a building line and opening it up. Same with the museums, and same with the libraries. And don't use landscaping to present a building. Use placemaking to put the building into the community.
Perfect, Fred. That's great to literally bring everyone out. And I think that's one of the things that we also learned from COVID, that public spaces are actually the places where you can be when maintain a distance as well and do everything that you want to actually. So that was actually great, Fred. Thank you so much. I think we are going to bring you back again. Till then, I'm going to ask Stefan to have his talk, and then we do a discussion at the end.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, great, Fred. So with no delays, yes, Stefan. So can you start maybe?
Yeah, thank you, Sugandha. I will start sharing. I will wait a second for sharing my screen. Welcome, the whole group, all the participants. Kind of strange to present like this, because I would love to see you all in real. I mean, this, well, you probably hear the trains in the background, maybe. But I'm here actually in the room where I was the first time I met Fred Kent. It was in 2016, I think. And we have this great view on the IJ, the waterfront of Amsterdam, which is definitely not one of the 10 best waterfronts in the world, I think. It can be improved a lot. Yeah, I'm quite sure about that. And the thing is, what I learned from Fred, actually the IJ, it's really nice to look at, but that's basically it. You cannot touch the water, not in any way. You can jump into it, but it's no way you can put your toe into the water. So this use of water is really something. This is our first placemaking project, actually. It's an artist's impression, but in real it looked quite the same, actually. It was a little beach in the heart of the city of Amsterdam. And here in this project, I met Peter Groenendaal, or Peter Groenendaal. He's in the meeting, actually. I will let him speak some words later on when I show some of his pictures. And the question here was, within 2 weeks, actually, the municipality of Amsterdam, the alderman, asked, can you think of something that is really, let's say, payback for the neighborhood? Because they were in this big metro line that was being built 15 years from that moment. So we thought of a little city beach for children, for grandfathers, grandmothers, mothers, fathers, etc. And it really worked like that. At 7 o'clock it closed, no alcohol. It was really a playground in the heart of the city. And from that moment on, I started talking to, well, especially Peter, but also other placemakers. I was not familiar that much with placemaking, and I learned a lot about it. And shortly after, I went to the Placemaking Plus, a placemaking project public space in New York, to get to know more about it. I met Fred, Kathy, etc., and the whole placemaking family in New York. Small introduction. I think it's not about these images, just a collection of images. But I think the only office in Holland that combine these three disciplines. I really like the happy music part, Fred. Sometimes it's really frozen and I have to warm them up a little bit, even the architects in the office. And of course, we have to improvise and the composition and the planning, etc. But that's what we do, and I think it's a good combination, and I can't stop talking about it and explain the whole, the combination and the possibility it's going to bring when you combine these. I wouldn't say disciplines, but these worlds. They're actually, for me, it's just one. Okay, that's this. It says in this poster. We try to to explain it to commissioners or people we meet how it works for us. So it can be a combination of all these things which makes a place great. Yeah, besides this, I'm also doing the BNSP. It's Association for Urban Design and Planning. And also there, I, of course, are an ambassador for placemaking. This is something we just introduced just in the beginning of Corona, actually March, I think. Yeah, people talk about social distancing, and for us it was just physical distancing. It's not about social distancing, on the contrary. And so this is, I think, very important to understand that we still can meet and still can socialize and do things, although we have to be, of course, considerate about all the precautions we have to take. Pre-corona, just a little recap. What was going on in the world of urban design, placemaking, architecture. Some examples. For example, in Barcelona, they were really, let's say, regaining the public space back because the plan of Cerda, the architect or the planner for Barcelona, was never meant to be a car-driven city, but it turned out to be like that. But now they substantially take out the asphalt, you could say, and make it colorful again. And they really literally take out streets and give it back to the people. That was already ongoing, and you see really nice examples of that. But also in Paris, Fred already mentioned the mayor, Hidalgo. They were really changing places into vibrant places where you could, regaining the public space from the cars. You still see some cars, so they're still making a lot of space for cars, I think. But Champs-Élysées, the same picture. You could make 15-minute city, they call it. So how can you make your streets vibrant again? This is also an interesting picture. I think, Fred, you still have a lot of things to do because it's quite hard. If you have the scheme on the left, I think it's really interesting. Then it really works, 15-minute city. If you have the scheme on the right, you really have to change something in your urban planning, mixed-use buildings, and not monofunctional areas. So then it's really hard to make a 15-minute city. But just aside, well, this is what's happening in Paris. Of course, it's not only about architectural or landscaping design. What I see, I call it exhilarating. So obviously we do a lot of projects as an office with around 20 people. So we see a lot of projects and speak to a lot of commissioners, a lot of people. And I see a big change since, let's say, the last 16 months. We have Corona. And I call it again power of 10. So but it's really a big step forward, I would say. Of course, it was not a really nice period. We're coming out of it. Opens up the everything, but we gained a lot of time. I will tell you why I think that. Of course, work from home. We have to change a little bit the facilities sometimes, but I think it really gives us a lot extra quality of life. The neighborhood economy. On the right side, you see a bakery where they were in line. Well, in my own neighborhood here in the center of Amsterdam, I saw my bakery left after 45 years. There was a pizza, I don't know, I always forget the name, pizza something. And on the left you see people going, because of course they work at home, they're really gonna use the neighborhood shops, the bakery, the butcher. Everything is coming back, not in the same way, but I'm quite sure and very positive about these things. The neighborhood, and meet the neighbors. This is a really typical Dutch situation, that you have your own garden and you have your schutting. So that means something of wood where you really have your privacy in a very quick way. But this really interesting image you would never see normally. So it gives us all kind of new situations, and I think that's really a positive thing. The traffic jam, we lost completely the traffic jam. I tend to listen every morning to the radio for half an hour when I have my breakfast, but there's no traffic jam. So that's really, really a big step forward, I think. And even also Brussels, for example, on the right, was already busy with lowering the speed. And I think in Amsterdam followed just half a year ago. And here, of course, you see they did a little investigation, how much we spent on making more asphalt. It's a quote also of Fred. If you plan for cars, you get cars. If you plan for pedestrians, you get more public space. So it's that simple. And we spend really a lot of money every year on making more asphalt, and it doesn't solve the problem. And what I see in our project, that it's so much easier now to, let's say, think of alternatives for parking or alternatives for transport. So mobility, it's really a big change since 1.5 years. In every project, it's a big step forward. So it's not only about how we park our cars, it's more the discussion is how do we take care of our mobility. So less cars, more bikes. This is also interesting. You see the electric bike. This is a graphic from Holland. It's 2018. It's an old scheme actually, but the blue line is really going up very fast. And we know that because we work for Vogue Bike. That's an electric bike production firm. Three Turkish brothers, actually, Dutch-Turkish brothers, friends of Peter Groenendaal as well. And they're a big company. They're the fourth electric bike production company in Holland. But the thing is, they want to have this this new location along the highway. That's kind of ironic, but still way to go. But anyway, I think biking and electric bike even makes it more interesting to make new bike lanes, fast or speed bike lanes. That's also something that's accelerating at the moment. More space. As you see, we reclaim our public space and make less parking spots. These are pictures from Rotterdam, where they really, but it's not only in Rotterdam, you see it throughout the city, it's throughout the country, of course, that we need more space for terraces and I think that's gonna stay. I think we will see that we actually don't need all these parking spaces, and we see the quality when we get rid of them. And sometimes the tension is very clear. We have a biking path, and the pedestrians are kind of shift off the sidewalk onto the biking lane. So we have to rethink now our streets, and I would say we get rid of the cars in the street. So this is another image. So we need more space and rethink the position of the car. Of course, the other subject is the parks. One of the big issues was that we had to close. I don't know how that was in New York, Fred, but in Amsterdam and more cities in Holland, but especially Amsterdam and especially the Vondelpark. Actually, I live really close to the Vondelpark. I can see one of the gates, and it was more closed than open the last year. So really have a lack of green space where people can recreate and sit and walk. So that's one of the images. You see here the parks in Amsterdam, and I will come back to that later. But you see the amount of green and the city that we really need substantially more green in the city, also in the newer areas. In Buikslotermeerplein, we'll go back a little bit here on top. You have this big shopping area where we worked on a placemaking project. I come to that later. Markets, also in Holland, it's very vibrant area. My market, Ten Katenmarkt in Amsterdam, New West, I really liked it actually last year. Only the, let's say, the fresh fruit and the fresh vegetables and fish and bread, those were the market. That was actually the market, and flowers, etc. So not the stuff you don't want to buy. So it's only the nice things actually that could open up, and it was really a vibrant place actually, more than ever, I would say. So, and it's really healthy, and it's open, fresh air. So it really fits to the new situation at this moment. Well, you see. Yeah, the next. Yeah, and what I also see is there's a lot of discussion going on. Do we need less square meters offices? This could be our office. It's quite dull. You see people sitting behind their desk. I think a lot of offices could turn like this, like meeting places. Of course, you can even go outside, according to Fred's opinion. You can open up these facades if it's next to a square, obviously. But it really we can have to change our offices into meeting places. At home you work and you can concentrate, but here you want to meet. And actually, I see it here in our own office. We need more space. We need more places to meet, to talk, to brainstorm about things. So my prediction is that we need more office spaces, but differently in interior. Yeah, there's one last thing I wanted to point out. Tourism in and after pandemic. Here we see a map. It's just a couple of days ago, where everybody really has the urge to travel and to go out. And of course, the cities like Venice or Paris or Barcelona or Amsterdam, let's say the tourist areas are really quiet. Some people relieved that it's finally we get some space for ourselves, etc. But actually, it's a question mark. I don't know where it's going to. It really depends on, I think, on let's say. For example, the city council, the mayor of Amsterdam, what they want with the city, what is so. That's really a question for me. Where is it heading to do? What do we learn from COVID? How can we make it again for also the people of the city? Let's say in Amsterdam, and it's probably in a lot of bigger touristic cities, that people avoid the city center, and you don't want to avoid the nicest part of your own city. So that's a question mark. I don't know where it's going to. I hope we'll, and I see this first positive signs, but it will take some time to change that and to regain it for the people who live in the city itself. I will show you two small examples because I can think that some people wonder, okay, this is all nice, and how do we do that? How can we change a place you don't like, or you think this could be more possible than what's there now? How can we improve? How can you make it vibrant? So I'll show you two examples. One is the Buikslotermeerplein. It's all in the north, and the other is quite close actually. It's coincidentally and very close to each other. Here is in a very dull area, the Bonnen Noord, it's called. The city obviously is developing really fast. This is already old, but still it gives an impression of what Amsterdam is heading for. I think it's 70,000, maybe 100,000 houses. I don't know. It's really a lot. I think it's more than 100,000 extra new homes, new people in the city. So the pressure on public space is even bigger. This is the development in North, and it was really, it was really a development or real estate project developers, and not really for the people. And that was the big complaint. And actually, the alderman of Amsterdam said she promised actually that she would work together with the people to build it up again, and that's what happened. So last year we started. And our aim was to make it the best square in Amsterdam again. So the Buikslotermeerplein, best square, park, or well, different atmospheres, obviously, in the area. And so we're heading for that. There was already some nice spots, but we were not there yet. This is a little bit how we work. it's really the Dutch approach, I would say. So here we are in the beginning. We get a question, in this case, municipality of Amsterdam, and we start meeting people. And how do we do that? Very simple. We just go out and meet people, shake hands. It's a bit strange at the moment, but we still can go out and meet people. And we collect a bunch of people and do the place game. Let's say 30, 45, 50 people together. And we start thinking about how could this public space, these squares, these parks be vibrant again. And we do that not only with the inhabitants, also with the real estate developers, with the civil servants. So it's not it's the opposite of the silos. So we break through the silos, get everybody together. And it's a very vulnerable process, because if you're not in this silo, where are you? So that's really hard always for our commissioners. So where are we heading for, actually? So it's a journey, and don't know where it ends. So it takes short term to get the first result. After the place game, we have quick wins within a couple of months, but it's always a thought of the long term, obviously. And this is really important, the coalition below. Then we make a coalition with all the, let's say, the stakeholders who can finance all the ideas we have. This is one of the coalitions for Buikslotermeerplein. It says Delftlandplein, but it's supposed to be Buikslotermeerplein. So it's a very wide coalition with companies like Decathlon, the shopping center itself, in Holland, the university, well, etc. It was the place game. We have very corona safe and a huge cinema, new but never opened because of corona. And here we have the view on the parking lot that was still the square at that moment. So we had a place game with music, live music just afterwards. These were the places, the 10 places we visited with little groups. We collected the ideas on the map. We make the quick win map, as we call it. And our idea, we stole it a little bit from Bryant Park. Our aim was to put thousands chairs in not only the shopping area, but also the whole area, actually. And actually, I don't know if that's in the presentation, we actually, as a gift to the owners of some shops, we gave them the first 6 chairs. With the little sticker on it, it said Buikslotermeerplein. Well, Corona held it up a little bit, but it's going to continue. Well, these were a collection of the ideas. We had the Vlindertuin, this pavilion, and some other little things, and the 1,000 chairs. So the quick wins started. These were the 6 chairs we made and gave them as a present. This is the long-term idea. There was a bowling we want to reprogram with a lot of people. We talked about the ideas. They want to demolish it, but we said, well, you should keep it. It's like it's an icon. It's really ugly, you could say, but it has a memory for many, many people. The last 50 years, people were meeting or their lovers maybe, or went out bowling for every Saturday night. So you really should keep this building, and it's gonna stay. This is the Vlindertuin. This is an image just a couple of weeks ago, in March, I think. So despite Corona, we really managed to make steps. And actually, this area here was a former bus station with a lot of concrete, but they replaced it, and now it's a garden for everybody. This is another project. This is a really special project, I must say, because what we did here is, this is a really strange area in Amsterdam, and this is the square. Well, and there's only one function at the square, and that's the coffee shop here. And there's a school on the left and a little theater, but really closed. But the special thing I want to point out is, here we had the place game last September. Here you see that this is the Alderman of Amsterdam North, Erna. But the really special thing is that it's ongoing every month. Of course, we cannot do a lot outside, but every month we have an online meeting. And we thought that it would really be hard to get the community, stay connected to the project. But on the contrary, what happened to it, the group grew and grew, and now I think we're about 30 people every month talking with each other about ideas, and we're about to do the first things outside. And I want to show you. This was the quick win map we made after the place game, and this was the coalition. What was here interesting, that we managed to get all the housing corporations, all 4 at the table. There was not one other opportunity where they met. So in this coalition for the placemaking, they were all at the same table to talk about the plans. And this is really special here. This is actually there's some screenshots of the website that the people made themselves. So the people from Noord made this website where they presented their first ideas to. So it's about a little route through the area, about some thing for the moestuin, so for collecting rain. Of course, the vlindertuin, also a big thing coming up. So my recap is that I think we gained Corona. We gained at least 10, 15 years in thinking of our public space and how we can make it vibrant and how we can really get to the next step in placemaking. Thank you, Sugandha. I give it back to you.
Thanks a lot, Stefan. Thanks a lot, Fred, for the wonderful presentations, and also to see like how Fred thinks that maybe we have to open up and how we can come together again, and what Stefan thinks how we have maybe come 10 to 15 years ahead of our times. And I still have that question from Tatiana. She says like she still did not get her answer on how to do it in cold places. How do you do the placemaking for cold places? So okay. I would like to ask this question again.
Yeah, it's just do it, I would say. We did an ice skating track, a little ice skating track in Amsterdam New West. Sugandha made the image. It was even in the newspaper in Amsterdam. Yeah. So to announce it, and it was -10. It was really, for Dutch standards, it's really cold. But that was no problem. Albert Heijn, the one of the biggest supermarkets here in Holland, they made ettersoep. So they made the really Dutch traditional soup for the older people, and they did. What did they do? With what you do on the ice? In Canada curling. They do that. Curling, right? Curling. They did curling. It was so cold, but so
tea kettles.
I think the temperature doesn't really matter. Of course, you have to take your precautions, but as long as you make it attractive enough, and skating is nice. We do it all the time. I mean, even this winter we could skate on. It's also kind of placemaking. I mean, the weather was really cold. The Prinsengracht just frozen up, and everybody came. I mean, how great is? I mean, it doesn't matter how cold it is. People come when it's attractive enough. So you have to. I don't think this is a problem, and it's
especially now with Fred's new suggestion to have kissing places. We need to have more kissing places in the cold. That's sure to warm you up.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, perfect. And yes, and maybe I was also wondering, Fred, Stefan, and Peter, what do you people think is the biggest difference? For example, now we are turning to this 15-minute city concept, and what would be the real difference between the US and Europe in general? Like, what are the biggest changes that should come up? So maybe we can go with Fred first. Like, what do you think, Fred, should be the first changes that can come in the US?
Well, I think the paradigm shift is starting with the sidewalks, and then the power of 10 advancing to the power of 100, so that once you got 10, then your next step is 100. And that means you stay home, you spend more time walking, you spend more time socializing, you walk slower, you walk with your friends more. But that's the kind of catalytic moment, is putting a bench on the street corner instead of another turning lane for cars. So the metaphor is, whatever the traffic engineer wants to do, you do the opposite, and you create a place. And then they can't take that place away from you. The more you own it, the more power you have. And the less you deal with your intersection or your street, you're powerless. I mean, you're just basically a pedestrian, which is the lowest form of life after cars in the planet.
Yeah. You know, Sandra James in Vancouver says that there are now crossing places in the streets half block, not just at corners anymore. They're really daring now, going half block for crossing.
Yeah. Well, I think you should be able to cross anywhere on small streets.
I agree.
And and that the car is not your friend. It's your they're just visitors. So it's a paradigm shift, you know, and mobility is not about mobility as much. It's about sociability that changes the whole concept of mobility.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's right, Fred.
So
maybe Stefan, can you say
down is the mantra, and think what that means. That gives us our answer.
Yeah, perfect. Maybe Stefan, you have to.
Yeah, well, as a professional urban designer, or what I see is it's really easy now to talk about less cars. That's one thing, but I already mentioned that, I think, in my presentation. But the other thing I think is that a lot of people realize that their public space around their neighborhoods is actually it's what they own together. So I think a lot of people were just busy working and passing through. And I live in a neighborhood where it's never been that busy. I've lived there 22 years, but I've never seen it so busy as it is now. So I think people realize that this is our space, this is for us, and we can do something with it actually. So that's also a big shift, I think, in thinking about your own neighborhood. So I'm very positive about that. Well, that's what we gained. So despite all the other things.
Yeah. And Peter, I would also like to ask you, like, what would be the first thing that you think as a city we can go about after Corona in terms of public spaces?
Well, I think we should really, just some of the photos we submitted that were in the presentation, you saw some new uses, for instance, in parks that were able to stay open because maybe they weren't quite as popular as Wandel Park. For instance, Park Frankendaal stayed open, but it has room enough for people to do organized fitness, but also they had the greenhouse that opened up with all the sample outside for eating, and there was kitchen gardens that were run by the kids in the neighborhood where you could get food if people needed fresh vegetables. So the parks are not just for people to enjoy rest, but also for activities. It's like Fred always says, programming in the parks. And this is what it showed to me, that how useful it can be and how you miss it when it's not there. And when the city closes the park on you because it's too popular, we don't have enough green. So really that's crucial that we spend time on that.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And then my neighborhood, like Stefan's neighborhood, I'm very fortunate to live in Amsterdam East with 150 nationalities, 150 different sidewalk cafes, 6 local bakeries, like Fred's neighborhood in New York, in Brooklyn. So these are the neighborhoods that are really thriving. And we really need to give and look at these things and start giving some budget to people who improve their own neighborhood with little gardens. And in the city of Amsterdam, they're doing that now. They're actually, the square near me is being given a lift, and people get a budget when they submit a plan. So you and I can submit a plan, and it's being looked at and considered, not as good as in Amsterdam North, that Banna, where people have taken control, put the website online, and communities totally in the lead.
Yeah.
But this is where we need to really continue, and like Stefan says, we're 10, 20 years ahead of time. It's great.
Yeah. And there was a part where Fred said that, in Amsterdam, Museumplein was actually the place to be. And we did a lot of work, but the city decided to remove Amsterdam. So what do you people think as Amsterdam is about it?
Well, that's your central square in people's minds. It's your central square to the world. And I would take out some of the buildings. I mean, they're so bad. I mean, I never would say that about most places, but there are just some of the worst architecture anywhere in the world there. And I know you're not going to take them out, but maybe you can camouflage them and open them up and make them just totally at the ground level, and bring them back into Museumplein, which if that's your most important place, it's operating as probably your biggest liability.
Yeah.
How about the first kissing festival there then, Fred?
Yeah, and I'll come with Kathy.
Yeah, I figured that would be great. That would be great. You could stay. Yeah.
No, we need, I mean, really, kissing is just a metaphor for socializing at a more passionate way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I also have one more question here. So do you maybe know if there are plans to implement permanent placemaking places in the new developing areas? So
Yes,
Eva wants to ask what about permanent placemaking places?
In where?
Yeah, so like for this one, she means Zeeburger Island, but that's for one place. But my question would be about the new developing places. Like, what do you think about if something is working, the temporary placemaking, the quick wins or the short-term ideas, then what do you think about making them permanent? And
Fred, you want to answer?
Yeah, well, I have a very strong opinion about this. I think that you should pick, and especially in immigrant neighborhoods, you should pick small spaces that you're going to activate and program in a lighter, quicker, cheaper way. I'm doing a piece on based on the let in Paris right now. And that's where I came up with the term 100 places, not just 10. And everything is programmed. There is no design statement. It's all about programming design, stage sets. And they have the museums, the libraries, they have games, they have just casual seating, they have water parks, they have the whole water is used, and probably the majority of the people are from those communities, which are largely immigrant. But it is good for everyone. So, doing that is just a paradigm shift from anything I've ever seen. And the pleasure people have is just phenomenal. And it really goes back to, I think, harkens back to some of the older days, way before I was around, but where they actually, I think you were alluding to, we had people doing the managing and programming parks in different, at least in cities here, and then they took that out as an economy measure. And I think that just opened the parks up for undesirable activity instead of nurturing and drawing in activity. And the other thing I would do is I would change parks to be sort of squares or public spaces. So you might have a market in one part, a neighborhood market in one part, a vendor's market where people who are producing or making things on the edge could do that, so that the whole park is no longer just a park, but it's part of a larger square, of which the green may be the interior part, but that needs to be more usable. But these are just, they're in a way, I don't want to say leftover spaces, but they're left out of mind, because that's where they are. They're public parks instead of community places. and trying to transition the name so that it exudes the fact that this is the community's place rather than a kind of a public park. There's a different connotation there.
I agree. Maybe Stefan, you have to say something about the permanent temporary places.
Yeah, what is sometimes an issue is that people are afraid that in placemaking we attract people to do things that will hurt or harm the development of an area. So a project developer says, "Oh no, we don't have to make it too successful because then we cannot make our plans. We have other plans." It's a kind of strange, but I think it's the opposite. I think it makes a place, marks a place, gives it back to the people in the first stage already, and it gives you also. Let's say Buikslotermeerplein. We met so many people. Actually, I think Kanique is one of the attendees here in this meeting. She has a really great dance school in Amsterdam North, and we embraced her in the, let's say, place management team. But we also tried to put her in this bowling building, and maybe it will succeed in the end. But I think these are the ambassadors and make really places vibrant. So I think, that's that. But you can start right away, and it makes it. A positive, from negative to positive, I would say. So I wouldn't be, and I agree totally with Fred about the parks. I mean, you should really make it as a podium for the city, for the people around it, and not just for one function, just running and walking. But there should be other things to do. 24 hours. Well, maybe not 24, but at least.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, maybe I have a question for Peter. That's from Titya, and she says parts of Amsterdam had been almost taken over by tourists. How to keep the neighborhoods intact, own the place as they are now, and not be squeezed out by the tourists?
Well, that's an eternal thing. I mean, we'd like to keep a nice balance. So community-based tourism. When I go to New York, and I don't read up on all the literature, maybe a little bit, but I go and look for places where I find people like myself. I don't go for...
There's no one like you anywhere in the world.
No, that's where I found you, Fred. But it's true. So it's a I know, I agree with Titya, and it's true. In Venice and in Amsterdam, Paris, in Paris, you don't notice it because the public spaces are enormous and they're very large, and millions of people drown there. You don't see them. But in Amsterdam, we don't have massive squares or massive boulevards, or we don't have that. So when we see these, the Chinese tourists or the Americans, formerly known as the ugly Americans, not anymore, post-Trump, everybody's nice. So now we actually... in Amsterdam, it's the place is too small for so many tourists, maybe. But we need to get the people who still want to come, and who come because they like, our neighborhoods. In my neighborhood, I run into tourists that come from neighborhoods like my own in Poland or in. So I think it's wonderful. I meet them at my baker, at all different shops, and that to me is nice. But the mass tourism, maybe that's the end of it. The cruise ships are not coming down to Amsterdam anymore, the large cruise ships, and maybe they'll stay away. Maybe that would be good, because it's very polluting and not a very great way to travel, not anymore. So maybe that changes, maybe the mass tourism, but there'll still be lots of groups and people who people refer to as undesirables, who come only to smoke dope in Amsterdam or excessive amounts of beer, piss in front of somebody's door, and do all kinds of nasty things. But that's because Amsterdam has been known as a city where literally anything goes, everything goes. So maybe that needs to change somewhat, but it's hard to stop people once they enjoy coming here. It's difficult. So I find that, and also they help to pay for our ideas, ideas like Fred's, where we need to have a fund to start demolishing buildings on Museum Square. Well, we can use the money that the tourists bring us to maybe start some of that, to move the museum to Amsterdam North, where they really need a museum. instead of Amsterdam Central.
So what we should
That's
say
long.
is that the building if it's not performing after 25 years, you take it down.
Well, that's very, very, no kidding. Sustainability, Fred.
That would be that mean museum line would be pretty empty except for a few.
But why is Chinatown, of course, is still the same after 150 years, and it's still magic. It's still magic.
Well, the architecture profession has a long ways to go to get back in the graces of the normal human being.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I have actually one more question from Eric, and I'm going to read it a little bit. So due to COVID in the Netherlands, people are looking for more houses in rural areas or suburban areas where they will have individual garden spaces. Now, this escape from the city might be a temporary movement, but if cities might lose some of its density and the pressure on shops, and then the pressure on shops and public program becomes bigger. So maybe we gain space, parking, etc. to reprogram for more extensive social programs. But what shift do you think this can give to the placemaking process?
Well, I was talking to someone out at Granville Island, this wonderful development in Vancouver, and what they said that the upside of the COVID was that the locals reconnected with the market. And I think what's happening on another scale, like in our neighborhood here, I think our neighbors are connecting with people in the neighborhood and becoming more, using it more and respecting it more and knowing people more. And so it may be a fewer people, but I don't think very many fewer, but they're spending more time out walking around and doing things. So I think we all learned that the outside and the public spaces were actually the place to be. And there's even almost a waiting line to get into one of our neighborhood parks.
Oh, super nice. And maybe Stefan, do you have something to say on this?
Well, actually not, because I totally agree, and that's what I already mentioned. I see it in my own neighborhood and in the other neighborhoods. Yeah. I'm a lucky person because I can bike every day from my home through these neighborhoods, then through the city center, right to the oldest park, most touristic park, the Waag, and then coming here to the office at the I. So I can every day I can see what's going on actually in the city, and it's exactly what Fred is telling. So people use their public space in their neighborhoods, and the center is empty, kind of empty. It's changing now the last couple of weeks, I think. The French are coming over, I read, and I see it also happening. So, and let's say the touristic part, how can we manage that or give the city back to the people? Yeah, it's not one solution. I think that's a whole list of problems and solutions, and it's just a mindset also from the city. So one of the things I read is what is happening. The Waag, it's here. It's around the corner here. Waagplein in the Waag. They're gonna push out the restaurant and the terraces, and they make it a part of their the Waag society. So their field lab or their, I forgot the name what they're investigating there, but Marleen Sticker. So it's going to be a semi-public space instead of a touristic restaurant. So that will change the whole atmosphere of Waagplein. So it's just one little thing, but it's a starting point. So if you have more of these changes, then step by step. Of course, you cannot fly from 90 euros to Barcelona. It's quite ridiculous. We have to get rid of that as well. But I cannot change that. But it's a mindset we have to do.
Yeah. Okay. So we are now coming towards the end of our beautiful webinar. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. I would like to ask for one last liners from all three of you before going, so that all our participants and also the people who see this recording afterwards can take that as a learning from you all. So maybe Peter, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think it would be nice if we move on from the power of 10 and the power of 100. Fred has already said for us now. But I think I keep on coming back to places to kiss. So I think if we start working on a little list online, 10 best places to kiss in the city, that would be wonderful. I'll post my first one.
Okay, I have someone who says that the NDSM ferry to the north is, by the way, apparently a great kissing place in Amsterdam. So I have already one on the list.
Well, we used to look at that, yes. Peter, and we started thinking, well, what about public displays of affection? And then you realize that the more comfortable people are, the more they're displaying some kind of an affection. It might be a glance, or you're walking down the sidewalk and there's this beautiful person coming towards you, an older person that just looks so gracious and wonderful and alive, and you make a contact with, eye contact.
Yeah, true.
That's a public display of affection. And that's another dimension of the social aspect of our lives. It's connecting in not just, socially with words, but physically with expressions, and just the idea of being comfort. I know going into a community, if it's been a hostile one on one side of the street and it's comfortable on the other, that people will relax and open up and slow down and be part of something. So, you could almost do a barometer, and when there's kissing, that's sort of the ultimate outcome.
Well, this is what we want. We want the best.
Yeah.
Right.
The ultimate.
Okay, and then the one-liner from Stefan.
Yeah, first, Fred, thank you very much for being in this session, Fred. Of course, you also, Peter. No, I think we need more happy music, to quote Fred.
Yes. Great.
And I will keep on being the ambassador of spreading it out. That it's no silos, it's all one, and we need more romantic places. That's for sure. And I think our in this webinar series of 3, we don't have place for Museumplein, but I think we have to in a couple of months we should do a webinar specifically on Museumplein.
That's the biggest thing about Amsterdam that is just so depressing. That it
the heart of the city.
About the most important place. We did that in Detroit. We made the center of Detroit the gold standard of what to do in the center of a city. And Museumplein should be the gold standard of what they can do, you can do there. So get it to happen. Take a look at our a product on our social life project, which we just did on the Borough Hall in Brooklyn, and it's a discussion about making it happen. And you could look at that, and we could use some of that for a shared discussion about Museumplein for the placemaking movement. I'm serious.
I'm too.
And I'll help you. We'll help you. Okay. Okay, that's it. That's an outcome. Great. Take care. I gotta go. Bye.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you. And we hope to see you for our second webinar.